Okay, well, it looks like we have about a third of the people who pre-registered are on already, and we'll let people continue to sign on. But I'll introduce myself. I'm Seth Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Oregon Parks Forever. If you're not familiar with us, we're a 25-year-old nonprofit organization that raises funds to enhance the experience of using Oregon's parks. And we're really pleased to have you join us this evening for our panel discussion about alternative options for camping this summer. So before we start, we do have some housekeeping. Kenzie Harris is on the panel here, and she's on our staff, and she's going to be providing tech support for the panel. So if you have any technical questions related to using Zoom, please use the chat feature at the bottom, and you'll see that, and she can try to answer those questions. And then if you have questions for the panelists, use the Q&A feature, and Kenzie will consolidate them, and at the end of the session, we'll open up some time to answer your questions. And lastly, the webinar is being recorded. So if you miss any portion of it or you want to go back and hear something again, it will be available in the Our News section of our website, OR Parks Forever, starting tomorrow. So with that, I thought I would start by giving just a little perspective on the agencies that manage the lands in Oregon and who are going to be speaking tonight. And so this slide will start up. This map shows the relative responsibilities of the various public land agencies. You can see in orange in the lower right-hand corner, that's the Bureau of Land Management predominantly. The green is the Forest Service, and the blue dots are the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a range of different camping opportunities. And I just thought it would be useful if we had a common lingo. So we're going to have some talk about cabins and yurts, the kind of developed areas. We're going to talk about developed campgrounds, which are places like the RV camping, tent camping, and hiker-biker sites. We're going to talk about designated primitive and walk-in sites. And finally, we're going to talk about dispersed camping. Our panelists tonight are Chris Havel, the Associate Director of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, Brian Mulligan, the Assistant Director for Recreation for the U.S. Forest Service in Oregon and Washington, and David Ballinger, the State Recreation Lead for the U.S. Bureau of Land Management for Oregon and Washington. What I'd like to do is stop this and go back to the slides here and start off and ask the panelists if you guys could walk us through the different types of camping options. And Chris, would you start us off talking about cabins and yurts and the developed campgrounds?
Sure. The Oregon State Park System is spread across 50 campgrounds, a total of 250 parks statewide. And unlike some of the other sort of major land managers, all of our camping is in designated sites. Within those designated sites, we do have a full range: yurts, cabins, even teepees in a couple of sites, tent sites of a couple of different varieties, and then recreational vehicle sites of a couple of different varieties. The tent sites is probably where we have our most variety, from horse camps to walk-in tent sites, still a designated site, but that you walk to drive-up tent sites, ranging from primitive sites where there are no showers available, all the way through what you might describe as a luxurious tent site where you've got water nearby and hot showers nearby and a really well-groomed site, all of which have fire rings and picnic tables. One of the things we do not allow is dispersed camping at any state park.
And Brian, could you talk about the designated primitive and walk-in sites?
Sure can, Seth. So the U.S. Forest Service offers a wide variety of sites all across the state of Oregon, including a lot of designated sites that we manage on, some on a reservation system, some on a first come first serve basis. It all depends on the individual site. Some have water, some have restroom facilities, some don't. It just depends on which individual location you choose to go to that day. We also have the opportunity for dispersed recreation. In the state of Oregon, we manage approximately 24 million acres of land all across the state. And in general, the majority of it is all open to dispersed camping. There will be some closures around some sensitive areas, such as riparian areas and that kind of stuff. And there's some closures associated with the fires that we experienced this year. A couple of things that I always want to bring forward when I talk about dispersed camping, because in this weird time that we're in, we're getting a lot more first timers that are experiencing our dispersed recreation, which is really just go find a spot and have a good time and have a good time. And we want to just kind of continue to emphasize those leave no trace principles. You know, that idea of pack it in, pack it out. There's some great suggestions about leave no trace on lnt.org. Avoid camping in some of these sensitive areas, riparians, driving in cross country to establish routes. And then as you're looking at these dispersed sites, understand the Forest Service doesn't maintain them for a camping use. They're not designated for that purpose. So we're not actively managing, for example, hazard trees that might present a risk to you in a windstorm or an overnight event. So scan for hazard trees, look for dispensable space if you decide to have a fire, keep your campfire small. There could be campfire restrictions set by county, state, or federal agencies. And then also, you know, you're always welcome to camp pretty much wherever you want, but if you're along a major road and stuff, think again about that safety issues you may have there. High vehicles traveling at high speeds, not paying attention. Where's your dog going to be in the road, or your kids? And so some of those things to consider as you look at dispersed camping, as well as our developed sites all across the region.
Thank you. David, could you start by talking about what is dispersed camping and then describe how it's available at the BLM?
Sure can. You know, I think Brian did a really good intro to it. And the BLM, we have 16 million acres across Oregon and Eastern Washington. 15.5 million of those acres are in Oregon. And, you know, the vast majority of those lands are open to dispersed camping. Some people call it boondocking. It's really just going out and exploring, and you never know what you're going to find out there. But I just really like to emphasize that folks need to be prepared before they head out. They need to, you know, carry a map and make sure that they have all the everything that they need before they head out. There are no facilities, as Brian mentioned. There's generally no potable water, no development. But you can camp pretty much anywhere out there. And Seth, would this be a good time to show a few slides, or should I do that later? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me. And I believe that's displaying correct.
We're still seeing the grid view. Yep, there we go.
There we go. Just a general shot, a little bit about dispersed camping. You know, like I mentioned, this is really camping anywhere out on the public lands, whether it's the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service. As I mentioned, whoops, one too many slides. Really plan ahead and have a plan B before you head out there. You know, with 16 million acres, I think our 16 million acres mostly overlap the no cell phone service areas of Oregon, along with the Forest Service. So definitely expect not to have any cell phone service while you're out there. You can contact any one of our offices to find out a little bit more about the areas. Those sites, those offices are available on blm.gov if you look for the state of Oregon, and that contact information is on there. You can also get maps at our offices, or you can call our offices, and I'll put a couple of things in the chat later on, just some good connections through the website. You know, again, a couple of tips for folks when they're out there. It's a good idea to camp at least 200 feet away from water. Again, fill up your vehicles with fuel before you head out. Make sure that you're aware of what the road conditions are, and also check the fire conditions before you head out there. One of the most important things I think that we really need to emphasize with all of these people, with the more and more people boondocking or dispersed camping, is to carry out all of your trash. If you pack it in, pack it out. That used to be something that we would talk about in the backcountry, but it really applies to the front country now also. We also suggest that with the increasing number of people using these roadside pullouts or camping at the end of the road, or really many of these areas are being used weekend after weekend throughout the year, we suggest that you carry and use a portable toilet. And, you know, there are a lot of models out there. You can find more information online, but you can also check RV and outdoor stores. And it's just, with so many people using the backcountry, it's important that we try to minimize our pollution while we're out there. And
David, can I interrupt for a second and ask you, how do you guys feel about cat holes?
you know, cat holes are certainly, that is traditionally what folks have done. But I think that we need to start talking about a different kind of an ethic while we're out on the public lands, that especially if you have the ability with a vehicle to carry out human waste, that's going to be important, because these areas are getting used from the moment that they're snow free to the moment the snow comes back in. So if you have the ability, we really encourage people to use portable toilets. Cat holes are still okay. You know, 6 inches, dig down, bury the waste, make sure you're away from water sources. But chances are somebody else will be visiting that site the following week.
So for those who aren't familiar, a cat hole is a hole that you dig yourself. And so if you're not carrying a portable toilet, at least carry a trowel and dig a hole.
Yeah. A couple of other items I just wanted to hit on real quickly. Again, bonus points for anybody carrying out extra trash. These areas, as Brian mentioned, they're not patrolled. These are not areas that we go to. We're not supplying services out there. So help us try to pick up the whatever trash you see while you're out there. Little plug for the 10 essentials. I know this is traditionally a backcountry thing, but you know, these are things that you really should have in your vehicle wherever you go. Make sure that you're carrying extra food, extra water. Yeah, just have those things. And I just wanted to touch on campfires. Obviously, a very important topic in Oregon. This is a picture of a fairly developed site. You know, if you're dispersed camping, you're not going to see a fire ring. You're probably not going to see a picnic table. But it's important to know what the fire restrictions are. There are many restrictions that go in. You know, typically we have fire restrictions start in May. They run throughout the season into the late fall. So it's important to know those before you go out there. If it is okay to have a campfire, we encourage people to use existing fire rings. We encourage people not to build fire rings if there's not one there already there. And really know what the closures are because of the wildfires. We have several areas, lots of areas that are going to be closed due to the damage this coming season, not just developed sites, but areas within the forests themselves. So it's important to know and respect those closures. And I just wanted to end with this one last slide. This was a well-traveled backcountry road before the wildfire last year. And just to give folks a little idea of what some of these roads can look like. So it's important to have a plan B when you're heading out.
David, we got a request that you go back to the 10 essential slide for a moment.
Oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing, but I can do that.
Just walk through it quickly.
Yep. anybody could search on the web for the 10 essentials. There are varieties of this list, but I think this is one of the most common lists. You should know how to navigate, have a map, know where, perhaps learn how to use a compass, just have some way to navigate around, some form of light, whether it be a headlamp or flashlight, sun protection, first aid. Everybody should be carrying first aid with them and know how to use it. Have a knife and be able to start a small fire, have that fire starter and proof matches, some sort of shelter. Obviously, the easy things to bring are extra food, extra water, and extra clothes.
Super, thank you. Stop your screen share. There you go. And now let's kind of go around the panel and ask you guys, what's your perspective on the overall outlook for camping and outdoor play this summer? And I don't know, Chris, you want to start?
Sure. Actually, the easiest way for me to answer that question from the state park perspective would be to share a couple of key pages on our website. Do you mind if I jump to that?
Please go ahead.
And sort of talk through? Thank you. Oops. So first off, I just want to say to everybody here tonight and the people who maybe pick up on this later and watch it on your website, you know, we really missed you last year. It wasn't normal, it was brutal. We had very few staff working, and it was just a slog to get through it. Our staff did a heroic job in the field, a lot of stress, but one of the things that we missed most was us being able to smile and being able to make you smile. And we're really looking forward to 2021. We're just crossing our fingers that we'll be able to pull this off. We are expecting to have nearly every state park open for both camping and day use. There are a couple, there was one in the chat mentioned, why aren't the reservations available at Alfred Loeb down on the South Coast? And there are a couple others on the coast that are even now a year later just getting in the process opening back up. But what we expect in 2021 is the campsites to be open, tent sites, RV sites, the yurts and cabins to largely be open. The only time we might have to close something is if we have a problem with supplies, with cleaning, or just the usual sort of power failures and other incidents that normally lead to temporary closures. But I do want to let you know that our website, we've been working during our downtime here to make sure that it's ready for this next season. So stateparks.oregon.gov, as you're seeing here, is the best place to start when you're planning your trip. And for those of you who made it through 2020 and are still able to smile, it's the one thing that's going to be different is the need to plan a little more carefully, to check the website, make reservations wherever you can. We do still take first come, first served customers whenever we have an open site, but making a reservation is the surest way to know that our site is open, the services are ready for you, and you're able to read through and see exactly what we're doing. So when you go to our website, one of the things that you need to check first is the park status map, which at a glance will tell you what's open, what's limited, and what's just closed for whatever reason. You can see a big number of red dots on this map right now. This is still the after effects of the big ice storm that rolled through. We have a lot of downed trees, we have power outages, we have damaged roads, all of which need to be repaired. But at a glance, when you come to our website, you'll be able to tell quickly what's open and what's not, and then drill down by clicking on any one of those icons to find a site. We really encourage you to spend some time here. When you are ready to get a campsite reservation, especially on our reservation page, you'll notice you can tell immediately what's now accepting reservations and what the window is. You might, if you're a state park customer, you're used to a 9-month advance window. Right now it's 6 months. It may go to 9 months at some point, or possibly even longer, depending on how the sort of the next few months go. But you can see even right now at that 6-month window, we're already taking reservations for campsites, yurts, cabins, teepees, all the way through August 23rd. So in a way, we're almost through the last major holiday of the summer. I know it's weird to think about it in that way, but it's there and it's waiting for you. So really encourage you, use the website, search for parks, especially those that might be new to you, and make your plans really, really well. I do need to mention that for yurts and cabins, we do have a 1-night resting period to make sure that they're as clean as possible between stays. We need that 1 night between. That's new, which means that it's going to be a little harder, I'm sad to say, to get a reservation. We also do have a 2-night minimum for yurts and cabins on the coast. That also is new. Those things will get us through the season where we're still sort of using unusual cleaning protocols and trying to make sure everybody has a nice, comfortable stay. So I apologize in advance. That's going to make things a little more congested than normal, but it's just to help us get through this year. So when you are searching for parks, also available on our website through the Find a Park feature here, spend some time just browsing instead of searching, and look for parks that may be new to you. You're going to an adventure no matter where you go. The state park system is small. It's only 113,000 acres and change. 113,000 acres sounds like a lot, but compared to the millions and millions that are available for some of the Forest Service, BLM, Bureau of Reclamation opportunities, we're just a little postage stamp. But there's a lot of adventure to be had within those postage stamps. As you're searching, be flexible. And if you're looking for special events and opportunities in parks, in addition to searching here, you might try, going to our store feature. This may not seem obvious at first, but in addition to merchandise and permits that we offer online, we do also allow registration for events. There are normally quite a few here, but there are only a couple right now. But there's a paddle adventure at the Cove Palisades in Central Oregon, for instance, where you can register online, book a date, and go on a little paddle cruise that's guided by our rangers. So check back frequently, look through these pages, and see what kind of opportunities pop up. It's small right now. It's just a couple of items because we're still planning for next year, but this should grow as time goes on. And in addition, shameless plug. So I'm not going to apologize because it's shameless and I'm not embarrassed. There is merchandise available here. You can buy, they use parking permits and all-terrain vehicle permits for use outside the state park system. And there is also an option for you to donate to the state park system directly. That money is used to help us prepare for the season and make some of the repairs that are necessary, especially the smaller unexpected things that might take a trail out of service or something along those lines. So check out the park store as you prepare for your trip. We did notice that there's a little more interest in some of our far-flung parks. And oddly enough, those parks, if you're looking for adventures this coming season, offer a little solitude in some cases and unusual adventures. On the geology front, Fort Rock State Natural Area is one of my favorites. And encourage you, if you sort of like Smith Rock and that feeling, but maybe want a little more solitude, check out Fort Rock. It's in Central Oregon, but south of Bend rather than north. In the north central part of Oregon, Cottonwood Canyon State Park offers wonderful camping opportunities, tent camping, dry RV camping, cabins, and some of the best night skies that you will find close to population centers. I mean, we're about 2 hours away. That's close in my book, and just outstanding night skies. It's one of the parks that we're trying to get dark sky certification for in the coming year. If you are interested in visiting, we do want to remind you that the usual health precautions are still in effect. And really, I know it's a bore and it's annoying and everybody is frustrated with it, but our website will help you understand how to prepare for your visit so that you can stay healthy. And I do want to wrap up just by letting you know that we truly do care about you and miss you. And some of the things that we hope you take to heart as you visit is to be flexible, look for new opportunities, avoid some of these highly congested areas, especially looking for the smaller parks. In the Willamette Valley, there are places like Lucky Mute Landing, where you can have a paddle adventure on the Willamette River. Um, uh, Close to your home, hopefully, if you live in the Willamette Valley, but all just an absolutely beautiful place. And we have places like that scattered all over the state. Be careful when you visit, especially with fire. Nobody wants the kind of experience that Oregon had in September with wildfires ravaging communities and burning more than 1 million acres. Please be careful, be respectful of each other, of staff, of our volunteers, and especially of the landscape. It needs you. Parks need you in order to stay healthy. It really is in your hands to be careful with fire, be careful with trash, pack out as much as you can, even if we provide trash cans. You taking your trash with you helps the park thrive. And be thrifty when you're in the park. And by that, I mean use as little water as necessary, as little power as necessary, and try to be as self-contained as possible in 2021. And we do give bonus points for the people who have the chillest, most relaxed attitude when they come in. And just to prove that, I'm going to flip my camera down here. And the first person who can identify that park and put it into the chat, I'll get your contact info at the end of the evening, and we will send you a 12-month state park day use parking permit on us. So I'll leave that closed here as I wrap up and also answer any questions that maybe I've missed.
Super, Chris. Thank you very much. Brian or David, do either of you want to chime in on any expansion of this in terms of the outlook for outdoor play or any particular ideas for taking care of the landscape while you're out?
Yeah, I certainly can. I'll start, and Dave, maybe you want to fill in the blank. So this has been an odd year, in 2021 shaping up to be a pretty odd year too, just like 2020. There's been a variety of factors that are really affecting our what I call our recscapes, our recreation landscapes across Oregon and Washington. We've had these large catastrophic wildfires that have affected a lot of the landscapes that we have across our areas. They not only do they physically close many of the areas we have, and those closures are posted generally on our local forest websites as well as at the locations themselves. We ask that you respect those closures, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because in many cases those closures are there to protect the natural resources there, to prevent damage from vehicles going down muddy road or damaged roads. It's also there to protect your safety as well, since many of those areas that burned last year are going to have some trees that are going to fall that are going to present a health and human safety risk. There's also the risk of landslides and water events associated with hydrophobic soil. So when the fire burns, it actually makes that soil not want to absorb the water. And so it causes it to slough, it causes it to have flash floods. So a lot of these closures are there to protect you. The recovery for us for these fire affected forests is going to take years. And there's some of these infrastructure that we're going to be able to get open next year. There's some of these campgrounds and trails and trailheads that we're going to work our darndest, and we're going to work with all of our staff spread out across the region to try to open these sites. But understand that some of this infrastructure was damaged. And It's going to take time to buy new picnic tables, get them installed, and reformat the campground. It's going to take time to remove the trees from both a consultation standpoint under Endangered Species Act and National Environmental Policy Act requirements. And then there's just the physical work that's associated with it. And something I always want to remind people when we're dealing with these catastrophic fires is this is not just a one-year event, a one-off. It was closed last year due to the fires. This year we're going to deal with a lot of the fire rehab, but we're not going to have the capacity to be everywhere all the time. And these trees will continue to weaken over time. So many of the trail systems that we open up this year may have some more trees next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And for those who don't know, a little science thing is when trees are on the ground, they rot from the outside in, because that's where the moisture comes from the ground, comes in contact with the tree. So they rot pretty quick from that. When they're standing, what happens is they rot from the inside out. And so that rot from the inside out takes a lot longer to happen. And so we're going to see these trees affect many of our trail systems across the region for years to come, as these trees take their time to rot and then be knocked down by those natural events. We're still dealing with the effects of COVID, both in how it affects our capacity to hire and retain employees, to provide housing for our employees, vehicles for our employees. These are all real things that have affected our operations. And then it's also encouraged much of the public to come out and enjoy their public lands, which you guys own. And that's increased use all across the region and all of our developed and dispersed recreation sites. So, as you go out in these environments, we just ask you to be patient. Things are going to look different. And when I say be patient, it's be patient with the environment in which you're in, patient with your partner, with your friends and family and partners that you're experiencing it with. And things are just going to be different for a little while. And we'll work through it with everybody. Rec is at a record all-time high because of COVID, because of the closures, and all the models that we've seen, all the research that's preliminary research and preliminary data that we're starting to get is showing that's going to continue into 2021. And how long is this going to continue? Is this a permanent change in the way in which people interact with their public lands? Very possibly. Or once the movie theaters open up, are they going to once again go to see the newest X-Men rather than going on a hike in the mountains? And some of those things are still to be seen. So enjoy your public lands. They're yours to enjoy, and by all means find a new place, go look at something new. So that's some thoughts about how we're looking for 2021. And I want to say it's not being negative. It's just realizing that things are different, and go enjoy them.
David, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think Brian covered it really well. But, I think I'll just reiterate what I think we all know. The amount of folks going out onto the public lands this last year because of COVID just increased beyond anybody's expectations. And for those of us that work in recreation, it's a little bit of be careful what you ask for. We always wanted more people to get out. We always wanted more to see recreation take the forefront, and it happened. And it really overwhelmed our infrastructure, our parking lots, our bathrooms, our everything. We have been growing maybe a couple percentage points a year in visitation, and last year, even after we went through what essentially was a shutdown without folks traveling for a month or two to sort of begin the season, we still saw 10, 15, 20% increases in use. So I think the trick for this year is be flexible, look for those areas that you haven't thought of before. Think about, visiting midweek, get to wherever you're going. If there's a chance at all that it's popular, and if it's on a weekend, consider getting there very first thing in the morning, or even better yet, perhaps just sleep in and wait until, make it a late day kind of a thing, if you can, if it's not too hot in the middle of the summer. So Yeah, I'm going to put a little link in the chat here, just a teaser on our BLM website. You can start exploring around. I'll throw a few of these in here. And I did want to back up. I forgot to mention when I was talking about dispersed camping that BLM has a 14-day stay limit. So just know that, 14 days, then you have to move. So that's just generally anywhere on our dispersed public lands when you're dispersed camping.
Any rule on how far you have to move?
25 miles.
And the Forest Service has similar restrictions, although they vary a little bit from place to place, location to location. And at some level too, if for you guys, it's really about respect and making sure that, you guys get a great spot and it's yours to enjoy for the weekend or the week while you're there. And really to make sure that it doesn't become a home or a reserved spot out on the landscape. And so it's to provide opportunities and keep people moving around the landscape. So places get used and opened and opportunities become available.
Cool. Well, before we move on to the next section, I'm sure Chris probably has an announcement. Chris, do you have a winner?
Sorry, I've been typing answers into the chat. We did have a winner on the mystery park photo here. Gavin, and I'm blanking on your last name, guessed Sucker Creek State Natural Area, and that's absolutely right. It's a tiny little campground, only for the brave. Difficult road to get to it. It's almost on the Idaho border, south of the town of Nissa. And it's one of my favorite parks for, as you can see, a starry night, small campground, very quiet and absolutely beautiful. Not your typical state park. So I've asked Gavin for some contact info and we'll send that 12-month parking pass.
Cool. While you're mentioning Sucker Creek, it's also worth thinking about the Owyhee Canyon lands. I think that's Oregon's answer to the Grand Canyon. It's on the Oregon-Idaho border. It's absolutely gorgeous part of the place. And I wouldn't want to do it in a regular two-wheel drive car, but it's
yeah, it is a bit challenging,
especially in mud season, but definitely worth getting out. So I guess the next question, I know you guys are reticent to talk about particular places that are high demand and low demand for fear that they get swamped, but maybe you could talk about sections of the state and both in terms of where's the high demand areas and if people want to get away from the madding crowd, where might they go?
Yeah, so for the state park system, the North Coast regularly gets hammered. And we all know that, both for day use and for camping. So, our rule of thumb is the further you can get from Portland, the better off you're going to be, which means the Columbia Gorge, the North Coast, and even some parts of the Northern Willamette Valley tend to get a little congested. You need to get beyond that bubble. But we do know that the further you travel, the more prepared you need to be and the more sort of aware of road conditions and closures you really need to stay. So if you don't happen to live in the Willamette Valley, look for some of the places that might even be closer to you rather than traveling to the North Coast. Central and South Coast certainly have a little more capacity at different times of the summer. For us, some of the smaller parks in the Southern Willamette Valley, and then in the southern part of Central Oregon, like Lapine, for instance, a lot of these parks do tend to get crowded. So being flexible with dates as well as locations can really help.
There's a lot of places that you can manage, that you can go and explore. As I mentioned, kind of when I introduced the Forest Service, we manage 24 million acres across the state. And I use the word manage because we don't own it. We manage it on behalf of the American public and the American recreationists that are sitting here. So, it's important to kind of recognize that we've seen some displacement and we expect to see more as a result of these fires. So places that weren't popular, weren't well used before, we're now seeing more use in these really unusual areas. Some of it's due to COVID, some of it will be due to fire, and when and where and how that'll happen will be a little bit uncertain. Dispersed camping is always a great opportunity for you to get out in the woods and get away from people. But that's not always everybody's style, and that's okay. See this sort of situation as an opportunity to explore your state, opportunity to see where have I not been before, and just do the Ouija board and stick your finger on a map and go there. The odds are you're going to land on a piece of public land, and if not, there'll be one nearby. And just head north, south, east, or west and go explore. There's some opportunities to really spend some time planning ahead. Rec.gov is where we locate all of our not all of our developed rec sites, but all of our developed rec sites that are available for reservation only are put on rec.gov. Many of our smaller campgrounds and more rural campgrounds are not on rec.gov and are not available for reservation. Each campground has a little bit of a different rule set in rec.gov because it's a national tool. So some have a rolling window of 6 months, some are 12 months. It depends on the different location. And in some cases, the Forest Service is running it. In other cases, the concessionaire is running it on our behalf. And don't count on these. There's some of these that are, that are in rec.gov that are first come, first serve. There's also some that are that are smaller rural campgrounds that aren't available for reservation. Don't count on a first come, first serve site. So where's my first opportunity, my second opportunity, my third opportunity? Where are some places to go explore, some places to go look? And as Chris said, consider weekdays rather than weekends. How can you avoid the crowd, camp in those off peak times, and look for other places to be?
Yeah, I think, well, I put out a call to our folks across the state and I said, hey, do you want to nominate your campground? And I didn't hear much back. Folks are reticent to give away their favorite fishing hole, and or in some cases, the use that they saw last year was beyond their wildest expectations. And now they're wondering how they're going to deal with it. So rather than naming specific places, I just reiterate what the other panelists have said. Move away from the population centers, certainly moving away from the Portland metro area, the Willamette Valley, moving away from Bend. Bend, is a recreation mecca already, and we are constantly seeing overflowing parking lots for our day use areas. So, that's not to say that you should avoid those areas completely, but at least try to visit in what would most likely be a lesser used time, midweek, poor weather. Some of the links that I threw out there, great ideas. You can go through our BLM photo album on Flickr to get some inspiration, get an idea of what some of the areas look like. Like Brian mentioned, BLM, our reservation, our sites that do have reservations, which we don't have a ton of, but we definitely have some. They are on recreation.gov, and our other developed recreation campsites are generally first come, first serve, and they're busy. They got busy last year, and they're going to be busy again this year. So midweek, go early, have a plan B.
I'll just add that from my travels around the state, since I've been lucky enough to have this job, I've discovered that going down to the Malheur Refuge and to the Steens Mountain and to the Owyhee Canyon lands are things that when I've posted them on my Facebook page, people come back and say, where is that? That's in Oregon? I've never been to that part of the state. And I would say that the what we jokingly call at the commission meetings, the legendary part of the state, the southeastern corner, is got some incredible places to go get away from the madding crowd and go explore. So back to kind of what people were saying about how to make reservations. Let me just share a screen here. Here's some links for you. The state parks, you can go to stateparks.oregon.gov. If you have to make reservations for the Forest Service and the BLM, it's recreation.gov. Brian, you also called it rec.gov. Is that just internal shorthand, or is there actually an address, rec.gov?
It's probably just internal shorthand, really.
Okay, and then the Oregon Department of Forestry is not represented here, but they have some first come, first serve campsites also. And I put across the bottom the header for our website, and I circled the Discover button. All of this is there. So if you go to orparksforever.org and go to Discover, we have a list of all the federal and state resources to go find parks, campsites, and get information about them and how to make reservations, that sort of thing. So with that, we'd like to now open it up to questions. And Kenzie, I see you've got a bunch of questions that have come in. Do you want to share some of the questions with us?
Yeah, sure. Some of the questions that I'm seeing are regarding like maps, especially dispersed camping. I think people are finding some difficulty sometimes booking reservations. So there were quite a few questions about where dispersed camping is allowed and if there are any specific map tools.
I noticed that somebody posted a link to Avenza maps, and that is something that the BLM has used. I also posted a link to our georeference maps, so you can download those georeference maps into the app called Avenza, or there are actually, not to promote Avenza, it was just one of the first ones out there. There are a number of map apps out there that you can use, and those work offline. You do not have to, as long as you have the map downloaded to your device ahead of time, you don't have to have service when you're out on public lands.
And our maps are, for the Forest Service are available if our locations are open, which it depends on the different individual sites in the world of COVID. We usually have maps that are available for sale there that cover the general forest areas. And they're a good place to start for those. They're also oftentimes sold through some of our private partners within the community. If you can find a place that sells like our Discover Your Northwest Pass, for example, it's likely that they may cover our forest maps as well. REI and other online resources are a good opportunity as well.
Another question that came up a few times was about gray water and dumping, especially in regards to dispersed camping. Some people were talking about or asking questions about camping for long periods of time. Where can they dump or dispose of their waste?
There's a few of our developed rec sites that have those sorts of facilities, but otherwise, there's some good opportunities in the private resources, such as around some of the truck stops sometimes have those. Some of the different rest areas oftentimes have those. We typically don't provide those. And when you're dispersed camping, this is a real big, leave no trace. You catch your gray water and take it with you, and catch your black water. And please take the black water with you. But you got to dispose of those privately on your own.
Another question is about car camping. They're wanting to car camp instead of using a tent, but find that it's not allowed in some areas. Is there any advice for that?
For the BLM, car camping would be just, that's allowed most any of our dispersed areas. That would be dispersed camping or boondocking. So as long as it's not at a developed area, we want folks to avoid obviously developed trails and boat ramps and that kind of thing. But that would be the same as tent camping on the BLM.
David, I thought there was a rule about 30 feet from the road. Is that not the case for where you're going to keep the cars?
I'd have to check on that. That could be. Certainly we want folks to stay far back enough so that they're not creating a danger or blocking access to anything. I'm not familiar with the specific Distance, probably a good idea though on our dusty, dirty roads to stay back at least 30 feet.
And please be careful of dry grasses that are high.
Another question, Seth, that you might be able to answer this one. Will these links that are being maybe posted in the chat and further information be emailed to attendees of will there be any follow-up email to the attendees of the webinar?
So the recording of this webinar will be available tomorrow on the Our News section of our website. So you'll be able to go back and look at the whole conversation and all the chat that came along with it. And there's somebody else had asked, how many people are here. And so if you're on here, you ought to consider yourself lucky. There's about 350 people or so, somewhere 350 and 400 who came on, although we had over 1,000 who registered for it. So a bunch of people lost out on all this great information, and you guys will be able to get to some of the best places early.
Those were pretty much most of the questions I gathered.
Panelists, are there any last comments that you'd like to make as we get ready to close up?
Something that comes to mind, and maybe I'll lead here, is one of my favorite things to do is to go do this dispersed camping that we've talked about. I personally rarely stay in a campground, and usually when I do, it's because there's facilities that I'm using, like boat launches. There's some great opportunities to go out and drive around and explore our forest roads and find places that appeal to you, whether it be a good view, a good vista, a good campground, or a good creek, a great mushroom hunting spot. I even will fill my boat up with my camping gear and boat around and set up camp along the edge of the shore. And there's a lot of opportunities to go enjoy those sorts of opportunities. And all I'll say on that one is, for me, that was the way I grew up. That was the recreation that I enjoyed as a youth that my parents imprinted upon me. And I was fortunate on that. And I recognize and realize throughout my career that not everybody was raised in that same lifestyle or was provided those same opportunities. Those that haven't, that might be a barrier. And sometimes it's just hard to climb that hill, take that first trip, and just go explore and go have fun and to set up camp along a nice viewpoint. And so all I can say, if you take anything with you, is go explore your public lands and enjoy it, and take that opportunity to climb over that hill and go do some camping out in the woods. It's fun, it's great, and I can't wait to go again.
I did have one more question that a couple people mentioned. Talking about burned areas that were burned last year. Are there suggested areas to go, to not go? How are those areas looking now?
So at least I'll speak to the Forest Service side of the house. Many of these areas will have closures. They'll be posted at our key access points, trailheads, campgrounds, those sorts of things. They're also generally posted on our websites, on our local forest websites. You can find them there as well. They're really for your public safety. For those sites that are, I saw something in the chat about our developed rec sites that are within those burned areas. I can't speak to individual sites because our fires burn so patchy oftentimes. And so, what may be open now, something may be open, but something a mile away may not be. And so rec.gov is a good opportunity to look at it. We're also teaming up with other agencies to try to get a better mapping system put out there, but that'll be a little bit of time. And stick with us in rec.gov. It's only as good as the people who are running it, and we're a professional organization, but we're not perfect, and so take some time to look there.
Saw two little questions come in through the chat that I thought we ought to mention. One asked, do I have to stay in a tent? I think the question is absolutely not. Sleeping bag on the ground and dispersed camping is just fine. Enjoy the stars. And then there was another question about how do I protect myself from wild animals? I don't know that I have an answer for that. You guys have any answer? Keep a fire burning at night or something like that? No, don't do that.
No, please, no unattended campfires. Put your campfire out, touch it when it's cold, make sure it's dead out before you go to bed. But from the wild animal standpoint, statistically, your risk of being injured by an animal out in the woods is next to none. I've never had with all the time that I've spent out in the woods, I've never had a bad interaction with an animal. Typically, honestly, I'll throw state parks under the bus here. The most dangerous animals live in the state parks because they're acclimated to humans and they're acclimated to the food. They're grab that attention. Bears, wolves, cougars, they hate you more than you hate them. And statistically, you're more risky driving there.
I'll take that bait. Squirrels and deer. Those are the two top wildlife injuries that state parks are not, that we tend to see, because they do sort of approach people and people think they're cute and harmless. No, they're mean.
There's also a question that said, can you comment on the rules and regulations about traveling through privately owned land to get to BLM land to camp? Is it legal or permitted to go through gates, or is it illegal or frowned upon? Sometimes the only way to get to BLM land for camping is to go through privately owned land.
Yeah, that sounds like it might be referring to potentially land, that BLM lands that you would want to disperse camp on. And certainly in Western Oregon, I go back to that map that you showed at the very beginning, Seth, and we have a checkerboarded ownership, especially in Western Oregon. It's in every other square mile in a checkerboard, and those private landowners do have the ability in many cases to close their lands, and we're seeing more gates go up. So, if a gate's locked and if it's signed, I certainly must respect private property rights at all times.
We talked about fires and the damage last year, and if you're not already aware, last year's fires burning over 1 million acres is more than twice the average annual burn for the prior 10 years. And so shameless plug for Oregon Parks Forever, but we're trying to help. We have a campaign going on right now to raise enough money to plant 1 million trees. So if you go to our website, OR Parks Forever, we'd love to have you make a contribution and help us towards our goal of getting 1 million trees planted. So I guess with that, I'll close it up, but thank you all very much for our panelists for being here tonight. I think the comments in the chat are showing that people really enjoyed this and found this useful. I certainly enjoyed it, and hopefully everybody has a good time with it. So again, thank you all for joining us, the participants as well as the panelists. Have a nice evening.
Enjoy.
Sure.